Council will call this meeting to order. For the record, it is January 21st, 2025 at 6 p.m. We'll begin this regular city council meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Kavanaugh.
Here.
Councilwoman Little Roberts.
Here.
Councilman Taylor.
Here.
Councilman Overton.
Here.
Councilman Whitlock.
Here.
Councilwoman Strader.
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all please rise and join us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and next up is our community invocation. We'll be joined this evening by Scott Harp from Rock Harbor Church. Thank you for being here this evening.
It is certainly our privilege to be here. And Mr. Mayor, Council, we are so grateful as a church for what you guys do on a daily basis and making our city safe, helping our city think proactively about what we could and should be doing. And we know that your responsibility is not light. And so we're grateful for what you do and just the opportunity that you have to help our city move forward. And today we would just like to say thank you as a church and as everyone.
Thank you. And if I could, for those of you that are here, if you'd like to join us in the community invocation, it takes us a moment of silence and reflection.
We will pray this time. Let's pray. Father, we come before you and are so grateful for what you're doing in our community. Lord, we thank you for the men and women of this council who help lead and guide our city. And we know that the responsibility that they feel, Lord, is great. And we know it's heavy at times. And so, Father, our prayer would be that you might strengthen them, that you might give them wisdom, that you might give them discernment to know how to move forward as they come up against situations. Lord, and our hearts would be that you would strengthen them, help them to make the right decisions for us as a community. We are so grateful for what they do. Lord, thank you for the way that you've had your hand upon this city, and we ask you to continue to lead and guide us. Father, we're so grateful for all that you've done for us. We ask these things in your son's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Next up is adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
make a couple of quick changes to tonight's proposed agenda. We're going to remove item 18, a fire budget amendment. There's a couple more elements we need to get dialed in before that budget amendment can come forward. So let's schedule that for a future city council meeting. And then also, Mr. Mayor, we're going to pull item, or I guess we won't take any action on item 22. As I understand, there's a noticing error, public noticing error for that particular item. And so the council will not be able to take it up tonight. So we'll take action to continue that to a later point in time when we get to it, but just want to forecast if anyone's here to provide testimony on Linden Point subdivision, the council won't be able to take any public testimony until it's noticed correctly. Mr. Mayor, with those two changes, though, I move that we would adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? If not, in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted as amended. First up is the consent agenda.
Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented for the mayor to sign, the clerk to attest.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is agreed to. There are no items moved from the consent agenda, so we'll move on to item 15, community presentations, which is the Meridian Life Saving Award, and turn this over to Chief Boom.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. On the rare occurrence that a member of this community, this Meridian community, steps in and intervenes and provides emergency care that definitively saved another person's life in this Meridian community, we felt it incumbent to begin to recognize those contributions to this community and our community members. So in light of that, I'd like to invite up Pam Garcia and her family, and we would like to talk with you and explain to you the incident that she found herself in and the actions that she took.
Yeah. So over in the front corner, a little.
Seen you do it at lunchtime.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is JD Hendrick, the Division Chief of EMS, and tonight I am honored to present Pam Garcia with a Community Life-Saving Award. I'm going to read the write-up real quick and then, yeah. So on the evening of July 27, 2024, a female motorcycle rider collided with a car near the intersection of Meridian Road and Chinden. Both the motorcycle and passenger car sustained major damage. The motorcyclist was ejected off the bike and was lying on the road unconscious and without pulses. Thanks to some quick actions by a bystander who is an off-duty nurse, she quickly determined CPR needed to take place and started CPR. Thanks to her quick actions, upon arrival, the fire department paramedics determined the patient was breathing normal and was starting to wake up. The patient sustained massive bodily trauma and was urgently transported to St. Alphonsus Medical Center. After weeks of rehab and multiple surgeries, we're pleased to say that the patient was discharged home and is doing well. Although we're not able to have the patient here with us tonight, we wanted to recognize the nurse that went out of her way to save a life. And so with that, we want to present a life-saving award to Pam Garcia in recognition for her life-saving efforts provided on the evening of July 27, 2024. Your actions, courage, and dedication saved a life. Congratulations.
Truly an honor, and I feel anybody in this room would have done the same thing if you were in that position. I'm very thankful she's okay, and the true heroes are the people who do it every day without this recognition. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Pam. You and Mike have been a blessing to this community in more ways than one. As many people are aware of your dedication and commitment, but thank you for that. And Chief, appreciate you bringing that forward. Mr. Clerk, do we have anyone signed up under public forum?
Mr. Mayor, we do not.
Okay, so with that, we'll move on to action items. First item up is item 16, which is Discovery Park Ninja Warrior Course Edition. We will be hearing from Mr. Barton on this topic.
Good afternoon. Actually, good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm here this evening to talk to you about adding a awesome amenity to Discovery Park. Over the last probably 6 months, we've been working with the Plimmer family and Abby Louie. The Plimmers are here, and Abby Louie is here as well. So this is their daughter Eva has a life-threatening disease, and she absolutely loves Ninja Warriors. So the family approached us to add a ninja course to one of our parks, and we have a spot in Discovery Park that this would be awesome and fit very well in. So over the last few months, we've been working with the family. Chris, can you advance that, please? Thanks. So yeah, terrific opportunity. We've gone through the design process. This is an amenity that really is appealing to that hard to serve group of kids that are, we call them tweens. They're kind of in between a kid and a teenager. And so it's 13 plus, but it's an amenity for really all ages, small kids, adults. And so you can see the placement of it in Discovery Park. The shaded area that's in the backdrop is phase 1. And this is the recently completed phase 2, where we have a teen area. We have some softball diamonds. We also have an active area that orientates very well to the playground. There's a 40-yard dash there that kind of adds to that whole area. That's a blow up of where it would go. The equipment itself, there's a really cool video. If you get some time and you want to look at it, it doesn't play well on Zoom, but it shows how active it is and engaging for people of all ages and really of people of all abilities too, which is super cool. You can see how it lays out. The equipment as shown would be what we're putting in, as well as the artificial grass that goes underneath it. So in regards to maintenance, it's super low maintenance, very durable equipment. No need for any additional staffing for this. So the funding, and I think the next item on the agenda is a budget amendment. The Plimmers have raised, they have about $185,000 through donations that have been made available to go towards this project. There's a $20,000 Blue Cross grant that was just approved on the consent agenda that we'd like to apply to this as well. So we're asking for a budget amendment of $145,000 to help bridge the gap between the total project cost and the funds that have been raised in the grant amount. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Mike. And if I could just add, I think that there's an opportunity for some donated services that could even offset that down a little bit lower if possible.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's true. I mean, we will, there is some contractor groups that want to step up and possibly contribute. We don't want to say to you that that's a for sure thing because we don't know it is, but they've shown a strong interest in that. You know, we'd go through the proper channels of insurance and public works contracts and stuff like that to get that. But yeah, there's several groups. In fact, Eva's father is a contractor that could possibly do the excavation. And then we have a landscape company that can do some ground repair. So it's our hope that we don't use that entire amount, but if it doesn't pan out, we have it and we can execute the project.
Thank you. Council, questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
thanks, Mike, for bringing this. I don't think I've ever looked more forward to a budget amendment in my entire time on council.
Yeah,
So I appreciate you bringing this forth tonight.
thank you. And I don't think we've ever had 50 people for a budget amendment either. So
Correct.
Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
Mike, this looks like a pretty amazing addition to Discovery Park. And I think it fills a niche that we missed. We thought that was the park that had something for everyone, and now I know we do. So thank you for bringing this forward.
And before we get to the next item, I want to give a shout out. I know it's a lot more than yourself, Abby, but you've kind of really borne a lot of this, working with this. And I know you would now consider yourself a professional fundraiser and you're available for any and all activities. But this, having people from the community step up to help make this reality and having I'll take a friend like you any day to help make something a reality. So I just want to say thank you to you. So with that, we will move on to item 17, which is fiscal year 2025 budget amendment in the amount of $145,000 for Discovery Park Ninja Warrior Course. Do I have a motion?
Mayor,
Councilman Whitlock.
I move we approve item number 17, fiscal year 2025 budget amendment in the amount of $145,000 for Discovery Park Ninja Warrior Course.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 17. Is there discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
brief comments. Mayor, I want to start with thanking you. You've helped to really elevate this project and we talk a lot up here about more amenities in our parks. And certainly this is that. But this one means a little bit more. And I want to thank you for elevating this. I think we would be remiss if we didn't thank the Blue Cross Foundation for their generosity as well. Our Parks Department, right? We get a great idea, we forward something to you and you guys mobilize quickly. And my appreciation for that can't be said enough. But man, we got to thank our community. People talk about Meridian gets too big and we lose that sense of community. And I say, nay, nay. When you see a night like tonight, where our community comes together and say, we're going to support each other. You got any kids in here from Compass? Got some aviators in the room? Man, I see those shirts. We love the aviators. I have an 8-year-old who came home and told me about a fundraiser at Compass, and I had to race him on the Ninja Warrior course. Spoiler alert, I didn't do very well. So I'm excited about this because now I've got an opportunity for some more practice. To the Plummer family, thank you for being a light and encouragement in our community. We need more people like this in our community. And I said this earlier, don't think I've ever been excited for a budget amendment, and I'm ecstatic about this one. So to everyone who helped make this project bring it a reality, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
two comments. Number one, I'd like to know if there's still opportunities to raise money, if there's links or donations to share that with the community. I would be very interested. I was not aware of this effort beforehand. I still think if there's time to find money within the community of people that would like to participate. I know I'd like to participate and feel a sense of ownership to that. And I think there's a lot of other people that would too. So if that information could be shared later, I'd appreciate it. The second thing would be, just for the record, anybody on council that can complete the course, I will buy you lunch.
Is there further discussion on the motion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh,
Aye.
Little Roberts,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Overton,
Aye.
Strader,
Aye.
Whitlock.
Aye.
I don't get a vote, but aye. All ayes. Motion carries. The amendment is agreed to, and we look forward to moving this forward as quickly as we can. I do want to echo Councilman Cavanagh's comments, even for Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation. We really appreciate what they do to help make it easy to give money to communities to help us put it towards a project that makes sense. And this one checked all the boxes and really, in my opinion, helped us get over the finish line with ease. So appreciate moving forward. So, and with that, I'm going to go relinquish my duties for the evening to you, Councilman Cavanagh, as I go do another community tradition with a sticky sneaker competition in Mountain View. So
Terrific.
enjoy the meeting.
Give our best to
very
the
much.
students. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right. With that concludes, I think our, I guess, basic action items. We'll move on to our public hearings, which is going to be item 19, final plat for Stonehill Crossing subdivision. And before I turn over to staff, yes, folks, unless you want to stay for public hearings of land use, you don't have to, you're allowed to go. But if you want to stay, everyone is welcome. And if not, we wish you a great evening. With that, I'll turn over to staff.
Members of the council, the first application before you tonight is a request for a final plat. This site consists of 16.06 acres of land. It's zoned R4 and R8 and is located on the south side of West Amity Road, midway between South Meridian Road and South Linder Road. The preliminary plat for this property was approved in 2023. A final plat consisting of 2 building lots on 16.06 acres of land in the R4 and R8 zoning districts is proposed. This is the first phase of Stonehill Crossing subdivision. The preliminary plat included a condition for a local public street to be provided off of South Oakbriar Way between lots 1 and 2, block 1, for access to these lots instead of a direct access to the collector street. Just a side note here, this is where the church is going on lot 1. This is an existing residential property on lot 2 here. The street was required to extend at a minimum to the east boundary of lot 2, block 1, and then extend to the south with future redevelopment of lot 3, block 1. Based on the city's requirement, ACHD also included conditions that required a local street to be constructed between these 2 lots and extend to the site's east property line. Since that time, ACHD has determined they will not allow a local street in this location. After much discussion with ACHD on this matter, council approval of a change to the access in this location is requested to allow a private driveway access via South Oakbriar Way on Lot 1, Block 1, with a temporary ingress-egress easement to Lot 2, Block 1. When an alternate access is available for Lot 2, with development of Lot 3, Block 1, the access easement should terminate and access should be provided internally via a local public street. Other than that, the proposed final plat is in substantial compliance with the approved preliminary plat as required. These typically do not go before city council, but because of this situation, staff felt it was important for council to review the change and approve it if they deem appropriate. Thank you.
Thanks, Sonia. Council, any questions for staff? Seeing none, is the applicant present? Good evening. Welcome to the Meridian City Council meeting. Please give us your name and address, and the time is yours.
Okay, my name is Brian Appleby. I'm an engineer with David Evans and Associates in Boise. Address is 9175 West Black Eagle Drive. I'm here with the property owner of that existing residence, Kent Mills. And as far as that condition for, well, step back a little bit. With that private driveway to the church, this is for Stonehill Church, if you haven't figured that out. We are providing a cross-access easement and a new driveway that will serve Mr. Mills's property. The condition is written that this would be a temporary access for several reasons, including Mr. Mill's desire. We were hoping that this could become a permanent driveway, and he does not want it to be his property to be served from the east upon further development. One of the reasons is that there's a 6.5 foot grade difference between the bare land directly to the east of his property and his existing driveway. There's also, where is it shown here? Okay. So this is just more overall look at the overall property. The area that's, see this. We got a new collector road that goes north-south between Amity Road and the southern boundary. And then the private driveway that's east-west serving the church property. And then the two lots are the church property and Mr. Mills's residence right here. As it's written currently, this access here labeled temporary would have to go away upon future development of the property surrounding these two lots. What you're seeing here is a preliminary plat that's being developed by Trilogy Development. So our request is that this access point to the east labeled future would be considered or would not be mandated on Mr. Mills on his property, but that this temporary access here could be made permanent. Put in the next slide here, better view.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you pull the microphone closer to you? Can you speak?
Sorry.
You could pull the microphone. Our microphones are oddly sensitive, so you almost need to eat the mic just so if there's anybody watching online that they can hear you and those in the audience.
I did share a new slide yesterday. I did. Are you able to get this on the screen or is it not? Yeah. while they're bringing that up, current condition number 10 states that the ingress egress easement depicted on Lot 1, Block 1, for the benefit of Lot 2, Block 1, shall be temporary until such time as an alternate access is available for Lot 2 with development of the adjacent property. At such time, the access easement shall terminate and the driveway on Lot 2 via Lot 1 shall be removed. And once we get that slide, it'll be a little more clear what we're discussing here. But again, this temporary access, we are hoping to at least be given the option to make that a permanent access. Where my cursor is on the screen is the garage of the existing home, and the driveway currently goes towards this new intersection. We're proposing to realign it right here. I think the biggest challenge engineering wise is just the slope between the adjacent property and Mr. Mills's driveway. About a 6.5 foot drop. Yeah.
Okay. Our clerk is trying to get that pulled up.
Yes.
Mr. President,
Yes, Councilmember Taylor.
and if I just ask a question, and I'm going to ask at some point really quick of the applicant, the grade, it's a 6-foot drop. Over what length? What's the distance we're talking about? And then how much per foot would you be ascending or descending approximately?
I don't have the length listed here, but I calculated it at an 8% grade.
An 8% grade?
8%.
Okay. Were we able to pull up the exhibit?
Yeah, here it is.
Okay, great.
The aerial photo of Mr. Mills's residence. This is the primary driveway currently. We're proposing to realign it here. And the conditions allow for this as a temporary access via cross-access easement. This is the private driveway that would be one of the private driveways serving the church. This section of the driveway is actually going to be constructed at a public street width, a full width. So it'll look and act like a public road up until about this point here. This gray section here is approximately the alternate location that is discussed in this condition 10. Again, it's about an 8% grade, 6.5 foot drop. Much less direct route to the existing garage, which is right here. And Mr. Mills prefers this location. I agree that it's more direct route to his driveway and garage. Seems like it's a fitting solution for a permanent driveway to serve his property.
Mhm.
Yeah, my name's Kent Mills. The address is 799 West Amity Road. It will take some doing just to put in the temporary driveway. We'll need to pour concrete and to do that, and then to come and do it all over again and put it in at an access point that's not even, I mean, it's not a decent access point. That's just a round turnaround that goes, there's a covered area there. And I don't want to have to build driveways twice anyway, it just makes a lot more sense rather than having it be temporary to have it be permanent.
Does that conclude your presentation? If so, I'd like to give council an opportunity if they have questions.
Again, just, we're agreeable to all the conditions except for this one. We would like that red hatched area, which is the cross-access easement, to be considered a permanent, or at least Mr. Mills to be given the option to make that a permanent easement versus being forced into relocating his driveway in the future.
Right. Thank you. Council, questions?
Mr. President,
Councilmember Overton.
I realized just a short time ago, we had a room full of ACHD. Do we happen to have ACHD on the line? Because when I look at this, the first thing I try to figure out what ACHD is thinking about is that quite possibly they're trying to align the future roadway with the eventual redevelopment of this lot, that if it redevelops into smaller home sites, they're going to want it to attach into a similar development instead of out onto that roadway. But I'd sure love to hear what ACHD has to say if they're online.
Councilmember Overton, I do see somebody listed on Zoom representing ACHD. If they are able to comment, perhaps they could raise their hand and our clerk will bring them into the conversation for a question from Councilmember Overton.
Council President Cavanagh, they have the ability to unmute at this time.
Okay. Meg, I don't know if you can hear us, but if you have some thoughts or feedback to Councilmember Overton's question, we need you to unmute your microphone and we'd love to hear from you. Recognizing that Meg has not unmuted. I think perhaps, Councilmember Overton, we may come back to this, but at least open the door for other council members if they have other questions. And looks like Meg has unmuted. Meg, can you hear us? And now you're muted again.
Councilman Cavanagh, that was me.
Oh, that
when
was
she
you
didn't
trying to unmute?
respond, so
Okay.
yeah.
Well then, council, if there are other questions, we will try and circle back with ACHD here in a minute if they have an opportunity to respond.
Mr. President.
Councilmember Taylor.
So, if I missed this information, I apologize, but the church what was their feedback on this change? Did they have any concerns, with your, suggested change? Or were they amenable to that?
Pastor's here to speak. Yes, the pastor is here and they agree that this driveway access, as it's temporary, considered temporary now, but they're open to it being a permanent access.
Mr. President, quick follow-up.
Councilmember Taylor.
This maybe is a question for staff. So you've indicated to the applicant that that portion of it is treated as a public street or that it's designed at, but is it a private road or is it a public road in any way? And I don't know if you can answer it or if Sonia can.
Private driveway, but the first, I don't know, maybe I'm just guessing about 200 feet of it is built to a public street with widths and standards. And then it narrows down to more of a driveway, typical driveway.
But just for clarification, it's the moment that you turn off of Oak Way, it is a private drive, regardless of the specifics that it's built to.
Private driveway, it's not considered a private street.
Okay, thank you.
It's on the church property.
Council President Cavanagh.
Senator Schrader.
Thank you. Just a question, if you could go back to the other slide that had like the layout with the future phases. Thank you. So I think the one question I had was just if that street connection does not occur as it had been planned previously, right? So if you take access off of the private drive, instead, is this going to become like a hammerhead turnaround over here next to these? I'm just looking at like lot 1, lot 2, lot 3. I think this is like your last phase of homes, but what would be there instead?
So Trilogy Development and their engineer, excuse me, showed this stub road here just because of this condition. They would probably terminate it short of Mr. Mills's lot if this access became permanent. They were just trying to accommodate the conditions as they currently are written. this where you're?
Yeah, thank you. Right, exactly. Yeah, I was just curious if that would become like a hammerhead turnaround for vehicles, if they would still extend that or,
I would imagine they would terminate it at the end of lot 2. It
okay,
would be more of a hammerhead turnaround.
got it. Okay, that makes sense to me.
I did want to point out that all this surrounding land and the roads you see is planned by Trilogy. They have access to Amity Road here further to the east. Would come, into the subdivision here with a connection here to this Lecter Street, and there's a future roundabout proposed here. So connectivity wise, when this is built out, the residents here will have options to exit their neighborhood via the Collector Road. They could head east and out to Amity this way. And then this arrow here shows a future driveway access from the church to that same road. It'll be a third access.
Council, any additional questions?
Mr. President,
Councilmember Bill Roberts.
I have a question, but I think maybe better directed at Bill or either one of you. As, did I hear that it'd be a permanent easement on a private road? Do we have the authority to do that?
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. President, members of the council, Councilmember Little Roberts, yeah, we certainly can direct that as part of the final plat. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any additional questions? All right. Sonia, please.
Thank you, Councilman Kavner. Just a couple thoughts here. I would caution against approving a permanent easement to this lot for future redevelopment of this lot. If at some point, 40 years down the road, this resident no longer lives there and the home is demolished for some reason and this lot redevelops, we would not want access to be permanent from that driveway. With a future plat, I mean, if you guys wanted to approve an easement, for a certain time period, until say redevelopment of that lot, then we could, in the future, when that lot 3 that's shown on the preliminary plat develops, we could require a common driveway to that property or some other access to the property.
Yeah,
But I
so
would
Sonia, I
see it
think
be
you're
permanent.
tracking at least where I'm at, and I guess that's my question is trying to understand what the need is for a permanent as opposed to temporary.
I'm not sure even why it's being called an easement because it's all on my property.
Well,
It wouldn't be an easement.
It's the access through their lot,
Oh, this is the
that
easement
that
part,
red area.
not the driveway. Okay,
Correct.
I see.
My response is that just the way the condition is written, that until such time as an alternate access is available, at that time, this easement shall terminate and the driveway on lot 2 via lot 1 shall be removed.
So
There's no
if
flexibility in the wording.
And I appreciate it. So I think I'm not the smartest guy up here, so we got to kind of dumb it down for my level. What you're essentially requesting is a temporary easement until you redevelop your property, until you sell your property or move away. That correct?
Right now, all that's left is the house on 1.5 acres, and that's what was inside the sprinkler system. So nothing's changing. I mean, we just sold off
Yeah.
the property around the house. Yeah, we're not planning to redevelop it or to develop it at all.
Hey, council, any additional questions? All right, you guys want to grab a seat? Mr. Johnson, do we have anybody signed up to testify in this application?
Mr. Council Vice President, it's not a public hearing.
Oh, it's not
So
a
we
public
don't.
hearing.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, for holding me accountable. Council, questions, deliberation? Maybe any additional questions for our staff? Sonia, I guess I have a question. We've got a condition that staff has brought forth. I assume that was presented to the applicant. Did the applicant voice concern prior to this evening? This ball's bouncing a little all over the place for me tonight, and maybe it's because we had a lengthy joint meeting. I'm just trying to follow what's necessarily being maybe requested to us from the applicant that's different than maybe what the initial request was.
Yes, Councilman Cavanagh, council. I wasn't aware of them not being in agreement with it, but I have been out of the office the last couple days, so I am playing catch up. That's why I didn't have the slide that he asked for, so.
I'm going to just check again then. Meg McCarthy with ACHD, are you able to hear us? And if so, could you raise your hand? Our city council have a couple of questions for you. And Mr. Johnson, I don't know if you hit mute or if somebody else did.
I hit the button to unmute.
Okay. And Councilmember Overton, I'm trying to coordinate with a couple of folks from ACHD to see if they could reach out to Meg, and it does not appear that it's the messages are landing quite yet.
Maybe she could call in on her phone?
Yeah.
Never mind.
Well, council, a motion's always in order. There, to me, there's a couple of questions that still remain about this, and I do think it is imperative that we do hear from the highway district. I appreciate the desire to maybe take an action tonight. I do not like continuances when they can be avoided, particularly for something like this, but in light of maybe a lack of information, perhaps a continuance may be in order. I don't know if anyone has a strong opinion one way or another. Certainly this new information that's coming before us this evening, different from what we've seen in the staff report, does make it a little bit more challenging.
Mr. President,
Councilmember Taylor.
just maybe to share some comments on this. I agree with you. I'm a little bit confused as to the right way to proceed, given the kind of application this is. Would think hearing from ACHD would be important. I would note, though, that an 8% grade over what, I can't tell the exact footage, but I can tell it's a very short, I mean, that's a pretty steep grade. So imagine if coming in, if you had a trailer to go up an 8% grade, what that would do, just potentially, I'm just thinking through some different scenarios, or if you had, something like that. I think there's some things that we might want to think through a little bit as we consider what we have here. Now, I know that the applicant has no intention of selling or redeveloping, but we're also trying to make smart land use decisions for the next several decades about how things look. So I do think it's important we understand kind of the map and the plan from ACHD and kind of what we're allowed to do. Given this is not a public hearing, it seems to me it would be reasonable to gather more information. I think that all the council would benefit from and come back and discuss that. I know the applicant's here and we'd like to kind of make a decision, but I feel a little confused as to what the right thing to do is at this point.
And Councilmember Taylor, I think to that point, to not have maybe our subject matter expert from a transportation perspective here to give us some guidance. It does make it a little more challenging. Meg, I'm going to try to check in with you one more time to see if you can hear us. And if you can hear my voice, and just raise your hand using the raise your hand feature with Zoom. Not seeing any response. Council, what's your action, if any?
Mr. President.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Mr. President, I would prefer to wait until we had information from ACHD. I think that's the most prudent move at this point, especially since it's not a public hearing.
Just
Mr.
for the record,
Kavner,
because
excuse me?
Go ahead, Sonia.
Would, if I may, would you mind sharing with me the question or concern you might have that you want to discuss with ACHD, and possibly I could help?
Well, and I think it may be various questions from the council. For me, it is the nature of a permanent access off of a private drive. That to me, when that property will redevelop at some point, what I'm trying to avoid, and I can't speak for the rest of the body, is dropping traffic from that redeveloped parcel where the future residence is listed onto that private drive and then onto Oakbriar. So where some of the changes came as a request of the highway district, and this is a change different from what they've brought forth, I do think it's appropriate for us to at least seek their feedback before we render a decision, so that the applicant then doesn't have to come forth back again if the highway district is not supportive.
Yeah.
So,
ACHD doesn't, they don't, ACHD doesn't govern access on a private, on driveway or private streets, just public streets. And yeah, we had this worked out with the preliminary plat, and then it seems ACHD changed their mind.
Yep.
So that's why we're here tonight. But yeah, that's certainly your purview to wait and talk to them directly, but.
Mr. President.
Councilmember Taylor.
Just note too, we've recently had some discussion with our frustrations with private drives and access and what that means with causing problems unforeseen down the road. So I do think it's appropriate to understand what's ACHD's, why the change and kind of some of the dynamics.
Okay. Councilmember Roberts, did you make a motion? I didn't know if you were suggesting you would, or if that was a formal motion, so you'll have to forgive me.
Mr. President, I did not make a motion, but I would be happy to. Mr. President, I move that we continue this discussion at a future date when we know we have access to ACHD.
Got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. So I would maybe just suggest, sorry, I realize I called for discussion then piped in. I do think in fairness to the applicant, because this is a land use item, that we would need to continue it likely to a date certain, so that we could, a specific date, so that we could also flag for the highway district that we would want their feedback. I think even if we were to do it for next week, I think that would be appropriate. So if that's what the maker of the motion was intending.
That is my intent.
And does the second agree?
Agrees.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any future discussion? All right, motion is to continue item 19 to next Tuesday. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the council president is aye as well, and we will continue this item to next Wednesday. And Sonia, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to our friends at the Highway District, make sure they've had a chance to review this and maybe be present if we have some questions for them next week. Thank you. Next up on our agenda is item 20, application H-2024-004A. We'll begin this public hearing with staff comments.
Good evening, council. So this is a continuance from about the 7th, January 7th, regarding the 330 North Linder Road property. I did provide an overlay for you guys where I put the site plan from the property to the south. The middle one right here with the highlighted yellow is the subject property. So he will be sharing this cross access from the property to the south coming up through this shared drive. It will be a cross access easement here. And I did talk with the applicant. We did have some discussions about several options about cross access, because that was really why we continued the hearing, whether it was going to be an easement or a stub. And having some discussions with him, he's actually present here tonight, and he does want to have a further discussion with you guys. So he does have a presentation on some options. However, he did provide an example of a stub on the front side of his property to the north for the redevelopment when the property to the north redevelops. Something I did want to just show an overview of this area. So his subject property is 330. 370 is the county property to the north of him. And then to the north of that is an existing daycare in an LO zone. They actually do have a stub to the property to the north of him, which is right here, right in line with the house as well, which is where keeping existing houses does become a little bit difficult with redevelopment of properties, because ideally lining them up would be a perfect world, but that doesn't always happen like that. So as far as with this, they will most likely have, or they will have shared access between his property and the northern property, but they'll most likely use the access from the daycare site to get into this site in the future, similarly to like what this property owner is doing with his property to the south. So reducing essentially 4 curb cuts into 2. And then at this point, I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks, Nick. Council, any questions? Seeing none, would the applicant like to come forward?
Mr. President.
Oh. Councilmember Taylor.
Just of note, I'll be recusing myself from a vote on this application.
Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. That was consistent with the previous item when we heard this. Councilmember Overton.
Just for the record, I wasn't here on January 7th, but I've had a chance to review all the testimony from the 7th, and I'll be able to take action here tonight.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Overton. Good evening. Welcome to City Council. If you could please give your name and address, and the time is yours, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Council. My name is Nick Rinker. This one?
Yeah, just if you could eat the mic, it's so in
Yeah.
case anyone's watching remotely, they can hear you.
My home address is 385 West Creekview Drive, Meridian. Yeah, so I just wanted the opportunity to kind of show you guys what I see here. I'm totally, open to working with you, however we have to. I'm not a professional at this. I'm just a property owner trying to, open a business and kind of do something good for my family. So looking at these 4 properties, it's kind of cut off on my screen. So I made, and again, forgive my crude drawings. I was just trying to be able to visualize this and a bunch of different options, all the options, without spending a whole bunch of money on drawings. So this kind of shows the 2 accesses that go to the 4 properties in question here. And they're both lined up with drives that are across Linder, how ACHD wants them to be. This is just kind of a rough idea that this Nick sent me of kind of 3 places that would be possible to stub out. And so, being really familiar with the property and what my plan is on the property, or what my hope is on the property, I'm just trying really hard to make sense of either one of these. And so I kind of drew, again, awful drawings, but I drew a couple of, like the one at the back, way back there, obviously is a little odd looking on a map. Also not ideal with these houses here. This is, I think, the one that kind of could potentially make some sense. But at the same time, where we have this access at 440, where it's shared and already stubbed out, dumping right into this house, this, I don't see a way that this is going to connect until this house at 370 is gone. And again, they do have an agreement, a cross-access agreement between 444 and 370. Those 2 that are approved, this one up here does exist. This one down here is approved and in progress. Those 2 do line up perfectly. So at some point in the future, when, this house is gone, my property redeveloped someday, this straight access obviously would be ideal in the long run. So moving forward, so this is the property line right here, this cement wall between my property and 370. It's about 32 inches higher, and it's, as you can see, just a drop off in one spot. So again, not ideal. This was the most up-to-date picture of, this is just for reference, this is 300. And then right here is the cross access that is stubbed out already from 444 to 370. And as you can see on this side of 370, that is a lot more gradual than from my property to the other. So, I mean, like I said, I'm not professional developer. I don't, I just want to do what makes the most sense for everyone. But I mean, the way I kind of see it right now is like, no matter what, I'm relinquishing with my site plan, I'm relinquishing my direct access to Linder, which ACHD, they propose that I line up my drive directly onto my property with this drive. Can you see my mouse? Okay. And so, you know, in the spirit of trying to make this make sense for everyone, relinquishing any direct access to Linder and sharing with this cross access over to the south of me, in my mind, now, I mean, I'm happy to hear what you all have to say, but in my mind, we have 4 properties here. No matter how this ends up, there are going to be 2 accesses to the 4 properties. So, I don't know, mine is also pretty low traffic. ACHD's report, I think, said 24 entrances per day, or however they measure that. So, yeah, that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Inker. Council, any questions? Maybe if, I guess I have one maybe to start.
Yeah.
So Mr. Inker, appreciate you being here. Recognize you were caught up with some air traffic or road traffic last time, so happy to give the continuance to let you come here before us. The main reason that I recall for the continuance was because it had been shared with us that you were opposed to a cross access to the north. In your presentation tonight, it sounds like that you are amenable to a cross access to the north. It's more about identifying the location. And did I follow your presentation correctly?
Not that part of it. I mean, my thought process on it was that an easement would, in the long run, make more sense for, you know, let me go back here. When, you know, this house is out of the picture, this house is out of the picture. So like, if you're saying that I propose to stub it out this way and keep the house, I mean, that is an option, but the only thing that is effectively going to do right now is just get rid of my display spaces that are right there, if that makes sense, for, you know what I mean?
Unfortunately, I guess I don't. And I recognize you've got a specific use, and your colleague that was here earlier in the month, you know, voiced some concern about some of your security. And I guess, Mr. Inker, here's the part where I'm confused. I'm trying to work through it. Maybe you can help me.
Sure.
If I recall correctly, your customers will take access to your business via cross access to the south, correct?
Yes.
Your business will benefit because of a previous annexation with a cross access agreement. So I scratch my head when you say what benefits your business, you're not willing to do for your next neighbor along the way. And
Sure.
just being frank, I struggle with that. And so help me understand why your neighbor to the north should not be afforded the same benefit that you yourself are receiving from your neighbor to the south.
Sure. Well, from my perspective, they have that from their neighbor to the north, right? Okay.
So, and I'm not looking to go back and forth, but you know, our goal as a city council is to look at what is beneficial to our community long-term.
Sure.
And we recognize as an entrepreneur, you're looking at very granular at your business, how your business functions. And we appreciate it. We try to be very understanding of that. But we look at, you know, not how your business functions, but the use, the traffic, and we look at that long-term. And we certainly see challenges when 30 years from now, somebody needs to get from one business to the next business on that are adjacent to Linda Road, we don't want them accessing Linda Road. We want them to use these cross-access agreements. And so what, to put it in kind of a way that I would understand, you almost are bottlenecking cross-access along Linda Road because you're saying, hey, they've got it over here, they've got it over here, so I don't need to comply. And from just as one city council's perspective, I don't think that's in line with trying to connect businesses together along what I think will be, especially with an overpass being built near you, a very, very busy intersection, a very, very busy road.
Yeah.
So I want to be upfront. I try to be real candid with your colleague. I'm not supportive of waiving the cross access from my perspective because I can't see the nexus on where it makes sense. That's what's great about the city council is that there's 6 of us this evening and we make a decision as a body. But I am at a spot that I don't think that I can be supportive of waiving your request for a cross access this evening.
Okay.
Council President Kavanagh?
Councilmember Taylor, let's get council.
All good. Ah. We're twins. Thank you, sir. So just to be candid and in the spirit of like moving this forward. So I'm in very similar place. I feel strongly that cross access is needed. I am flexible as the location of the cross access. Out of the locations that you identified, which one is best for you?
So lining it up with the house to where they're all in line. And I'm not, so just to be clear, I wasn't like, my goal is not to have cross access waived altogether. Maybe my terminology is just wrong. My point is stubbing it now versus an easement, like with my house there while my house is there, or the house is on that property. So if I can stub it, I can pave on both sides of the house, right? But for the time being, until that house and the house to the north are demolished and that cross access actually connects, and the way I see it is it's just kind of some pavement that's going to be there anyways, but that I can't use for vehicle display. Maybe I'm not understanding this properly.
And I think you are, and we recognize, and I appreciate this is a good writer for council. You're not a developer, you're not doing these projects all over the country. You're an entrepreneur trying to do something for your business. And so that's certainly why we foster and encourage good collaboration with our staff around this. And I guess maybe to that point, I would like to at least get some feedback from staff because I'm not quite sure if a cross access in front of the house would be approved by ACHD. And I hear where you're coming from. You don't want to have to do this until your house and that house are demolished. But candidly, the thought of both of those being demolished at the same time for something larger when you're already annexed in the city is likely not going to happen, which is why the council has to make some of these hard decisions about what is best long-term. Because if we're relying on 2 neighbors to redevelop at the same time after they've already been annexed in the city, it's unlikely. So I want to give staff at least an opportunity to weigh in about locations of cross access or stub, just so the council can be on the same page.
Okay.
Nick, any feedback for us?
Yeah, President Kavanagh. So yes, as far as with this, and to maybe clarify a little bit, in my conversations with Nick, really correct. He's not looking to waive the cross access. It's really the easement versus stubbing it at this time. And in talking with him, if you guys were gonna move forward with the easement direction, which I didn't think was the direction, but if that was the case that you guys chose to do, in line with the house does make sense. So it is all in a line in the future.
Okay.
If it is going to be stubbed at this time, it does not make sense to put it in line with the house because then it's not actually usable at this time. So, in talking with my counterparts here at the city as well as ACHD and especially my building department, because we don't want him to run into issues when it comes to building permit. He can actually put it in front of the building. There is enough space if he chooses to do that. And I did talk with my building department. It's not going to affect anything on his end. There is enough room because he is doing water conserving design in his landscaping. So his landscape buffer is actually going to be reduced 50% to 12.5 feet. Which will actually give adequate room for a 20-foot drive aisle where everything will still be accessible. Is that a perfect scenario? No. And that's really where, you know, in my conversation with Nick, I talked about three different options. The front of the building or in front of the building, in between the shop, the future shop and the building, which is not ideal either. So he's not walking out his back door into a drive aisle, or in the rear of the property, where it's still not, you know, maybe the best place, but that may be an area where you guys feel more comfortable with it. And that's really why I kind of broke down three different options for him. And this is the site plan that he liked the most. The option of close to Linder in front of the building is the one that he liked the most. And ultimately, that's why we came forward with that tonight. I think staff is willing to work with him either way. I did the due diligence to make sure that any of the three could work functionally. But it really is your guys' purview on which three you guys would prefer to see if you do want a stub.
Mr. President,
Councilmember Overton.
just a quick follow-up. Just a complete clarification on how this works. So if we stub to the north at the front of his property, and he stubs that all the way, but there's what, a 32-inch difference between the two properties. I believe the applicant's understanding is he doesn't believe he can then use that area of Stubbs Street for presentation of his vehicles. But I would think, as there's a 32-inch difference between the two properties, up until the time that the other side is being utilized, he could still functionally use that property. He can't gate the stub on either side, but you could still use it to position and show off your vehicles on the lot. And is that a correct assumption?
Council President Cavanagh, Council Member Overton, that is correct. As far as with this, because the property to the north wouldn't actually be utilizing it, it's not actually a drive aisle that would be functional at that point. That on the north portion of the site, it could be used as in the interim, not necessarily is that, I guess that could be worked into the condition. If that's something that you guys did choose to do, that is something that could be worked into the condition, but correct. Since it's not actually a functional cross access at this point, it could be something that we condition would subside once the northern property redevelops. That's correct.
Thank you.
Council President.
Council Vice President Strader.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, it sounds like you're comfortable with the cross-access easements if it's in the front of your property. But I just wanted to clarify, if we were requiring you to build a stub street to the edge of your property, do you still want it in that location, or is the back of your property better for you? Because long-term, if the property to the north redevelops, then you would not be able to, at that time, show your vehicles in this spot. Whereas if it was the spot in the back of your property, then it wouldn't affect you as much. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that. I was in the camp of having you actually build the stub street. And the reason that I feel that way is this is kind of our only bite at the apple. It's very difficult to get a property owner in existing conditions when things change around them to then construct something, right? And so if you build the stub street on your property, then all of the economics of building the remaining stub street to the north at the time that redevelops falls to that property owner. So that's where I was coming from. So I just wanted to clarify, do you still feel like the spot in the front of your property is where you would like to build a stub street if we require you to do that?
I guess that's a tough one because can we go back to my PowerPoint? So I guess the part to me, like looking in the long term, the part for me that seems really challenging with that is like just because, you know, I've walked the property and I've driven on the property. And so to try to like make the turn with a truck and trailer, fire truck, whatever, to get like here, it's not, you know, like the corner of my building is right in the way. This property, I mean, I'm not against it. It just seems like a really like aggressive little switchback to make. But again, I'm not. an engineer, just being on the spot there, it's just feels to me like it would be really challenging to kind of maneuver that.
Council, any additional questions? Okay. Grab a seat. This is a public hearing. Mr. Johnson, do we have anybody signed up?
Mr. Cavanagh, no.
All right. With no public testimony, are there any closing remarks you would like to make?
No, I mean, I definitely I don't want to get a denial. I want to do something that makes sense. You know, again, just looking at it, like how it would look on a map, to me, those three options just look not great as far as functionality goes. And then coupling that with the stub on 444, you know, where it dumps right into that house. So, yeah, I mean, I want to do what makes the most sense. Either one of these are going to connect, either one of these, whether it's here in line with the house, here, it's going to end up going and connecting not in line with any of this still. So.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
President,
Mr. Whitlock.
can I just ask one question?
Mr. Whitlock, you can ask as many questions as you'd like this evening.
Does the 32-inch height extend the whole length of the northern part of your property?
'Cause I haven't walked up there. No, not the whole length. There's a sidewalk there. So it's definitely really aggressive, like from here all the way through here where that retaining wall starts, and then it you know dumps down to where the sidewalk is in line. But you know, all the way from here back past behind the fence, and then it kind of gradually, once you get to the very back of the property, they're a lot closer to being level with each other.
So I guess my question is, if we require cross-access, you're going to have to do more than just have an 8-foot wide gated access at some point. You build out and you have to build up in order to have that access, would be my understanding.
I mean, the way that I would have thought of that is that, so 370 is higher than the property to its north and to its south. So I would think long-term, what would make sense is for 370 to like become lower to match the two properties adjacent to it versus me come up to match the outlier. Does that make sense?
It does, Mr. President. Follow up.
Councilmember Whitlock.
It just, from the pictures, it seems that to the north, that cement wall and then part of their drive seems to be paved or cemented. So what you're saying is tear all of that out to lower their elevation to match 330 and whatever the address was.
I guess it really depends on where the cross access ends up being and what happens with that property when they annex and zone. I don't know. I mean, would their driveway, the way it is, work as, like, could it be like that and that be the cross access? This is what it looks like from standing at 444, looking to the south at that property in question. Obviously you can't tell as aggressive, but that is a slope up, and then it, you know, ultimately ends at that retaining wall. So.
Thank you. And council, our good clerk, Mr. Johnson, remind me, I didn't check to see if there was anybody online who chose testimony, or anybody in the room that wished to testify that did not sign up. You good? Hey. Please, we'll do public testimony. We'll give you one more shot, sir, Mr. Riker, to provide final comments after, Mr. Riker, after you've heard from the public testimony. Thanks. Good evening, welcome. Please state your name and address for the record, and the time is yours, sir.
Yep, good evening, commissioners and staff. Matt Wilkie, P.O. Box 7, Middleton, Idaho. As I spoke before, I represented Nick with his purchase on this property. I'm a real estate broker and do land development projects as well for planning. I just want to state we have a pretty big project for a client out in Canyon County where we're actually working with Canyon Highway District 4. They have in their highway district manual requirements to where if you develop a property on a quarter section line, you're supposed to provide for collector road access across a property. Where we were developing a property out there, we were able to get a variance to just place an easement on the site and not build it at this time until future area development came in the future. And that worked out really well, not only for my client, but also for Canyon Highway 4, because they didn't have to build a road to nowhere that they had to maintain. And then things change so much with development projects moving in towards the future where, as we can see on this site currently, there's not a lot of need for cross access, and it actually doesn't work out too well. My thoughts are, just like the applicant has stated, this one seems to be the most logical future access. Now, the 370 does have access currently reserved. They do have it stubbed right here. So if they were to develop, and ACDHD is going to require them to cut this, close this curb cut, most likely, they will have good access here, just like Nick has to the south here. So the applicant has access through this neighbor to the south. My thought was, wouldn't it be advantageous to the city's future growth plan to just keep this as a reserved easement in this area? And then if this building were to develop to a higher and better use someday and need to be removed, that overfill that was done just around this home site could be leveled out and it would match the north and the southern properties. That's kind of my thoughts. And ACHD did state that there were only 24 trips per day planned for the applicant's property here. I'm not sure what this property would plan in the future. It almost kind of looks like they are doing some type of lot storage use as well. So I wouldn't anticipate it being too much different, being a similar size property, almost identical size, if they were to keep this home. Now, if they did remove that in the future, like I said, they do have a great access here. That's where ACHD is going to want it, and they're also going to want the access to the south. So you, as the applicant stated, we have two approved accesses on the lender here for the principal arterial. And the way these two buildings are, the two home sites are currently, it's not very conducive to a cross access. If you went in front of the building, it's really getting close to lender there. So I would be in favor of just keeping that easement there in place in the middle there for future growth.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else looking to provide public testimony this evening? All right. Mr. Rinker, the last word always belongs to our applicant. Anything else you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, council. So one thing that just kind of popped into my head while I was looking at this, I was under the impression that if I were to stub out somewhere, that would basically devote that space on my site plan to nothing but a stub, if that makes sense, as if it were a road. So if I did, if I were to stub out right here, but I could still park there until, that cross access is connected, then it really wouldn't hurt my plan. I'll tell you, I mean, the one thing that I have to have, on my site plan, or that the city has to agree with ITD on, is the 5 display spaces. So 5 spaces that I can display cars. So if I were to stub that right here, but still, as long as these two houses are standing, be able to display cars on that space, then that wouldn't really hurt me. So just thought that was worth mentioning.
Council, any additional questions for the applicant?
Mr. President,
Councilmember Overton.
Nick, I believe that's exactly what I was trying to get to,
Okay.
is that if you stub to the north up against a 32-inch concrete wall because they don't match up, you can't put a gate up there, and you don't need to because there's a 32-inch difference between the two elevations. But I do believe you'll be able to use that property that is your stub for presentation of your vehicles for as long as that property remains until it becomes redeveloped with the one to the north. Is that
Sure. That does, yeah, yeah. And knowing that, that would definitely, cause me to have this as my preferred versus this is what I actually drew the site plan that I provided to Nick. If I were to stub it, that was because I didn't know that I could use that space in the meantime, if that makes sense. So.
Council, any additional questions? Nick, I've got one for you.
Yes.
Sorry, Nick, our planner, not unit drinker. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Nick, from the planning staff's perspective, where is the correct location to place this?
President Kavanagh, it's in regards to the correct placement. And ideally, unfortunately, because of the existing house, putting it in line with the house provides some difficulties because if the northern property is to redevelop, it's not a usable cross access at that point because there's not actually a minimum 20-foot drive aisle is what we need without parking. So that's the difficult. That's why staff came forward with the potential for an easement in that location when we first came to you guys. Was for that kind of a compromise. After talking with the staff and with Bill and some other people in the planning department, it seems like we've done that in the past. However, if we want to stub now, I would say the one along Linder or the one in the rear of the property are probably the two best locations for the applicant at this time if we are going to require a stub. And it sounds like grade in the rear of the property might be a little bit less from what I understood. Could potentially be a little bit more advantageous in the future for that reason, and it wouldn't affect the display area. So as far as my expert opinion in this case, if we are going to require a stub, I think the rear of the property would probably make more sense at this point.
Thank you. Council, any additional questions? Thank you, Mr. Drinker. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Council President Kavanagh.
Council Vice President Strader.
Happy to start a discussion. I have been a proponent of having him build the substreet. I feel like that usually gets us to the best outcome. It's pretty clear we're going to need some connectivity. I also feel like you're benefiting from cross access, so you should provide cross access. I do think that's kind of being good neighbors. It does definitely put some pressure on that property to the north to figure that out, right? So if at that time they'd have to make this cross access work as well with whatever their plans are, but I think that's kind of how this goes. You're here first and you're setting kind of what will happen. I would encourage you, I kind of agree that the one to the rear of the property might strategically be better for you, just because I'm concerned for you that if you do choose the one with your display area, if for some reason it did suddenly develop to the north, that could put you into a pickle, a little bit easier. So I actually think that one to the rear of the property makes sense for all the reasons that our planning staff talked about. Yeah, I mean, that to me makes the most sense. I'm happy to make a motion. I'm kind of like seeing some head nods. One, not a head nod, so I'll wait to hear what the twitch is about.
Mr. President?
Councilmember Overton.
Yeah, I just want to kind of jump in because I wasn't here on the 7th. But I did agree with most of the comments that were presented that the stub street should be a requirement, not an easement, just because we don't really have the authority of the easement down the road, 10, 15 years down the road to make sure that happens. The question then becomes, what's the best location? I'd love to have the applicant pick that location. But I also believe, after listening to staff and Councilwoman Strader, that the rear is probably going to have the least effect on your business plan and be the proper place to put that stub street for the future. Again, we could be talking about something that's 10 to 15 years down the road before it's ever needed. And there's a whole different council up here at that time. But we don't want that council looking back at us going, what were you guys thinking? How come you didn't require stub street? We're trying to make sure that some errors that were made in the past aren't made today. And that's for the reason why we want to do this. This is our shot to make sure that we get that cross access done and done right. So I would support going to the rear location, not affecting your display area, and requiring that stub street to the north.
Council, the public hearing still open? Shrinker, public hearing still open. You're welcome to provide comment.
So I think just with my site plan in my head, thinking about an active cross access in the front versus behind my building, you know, right here, but I think is this the location that we have in question right now, or the one at the very, very rear? You're talking about the rear?
Nick, correct. It will be the one where the cursor is at. It will be behind the future maintenance shop, which there's potential some ways we could maybe move around your maintenance shop to where we can make it work a little bit better than where it's at.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the spirit of not having to like so much cut mine and the neighbor to the north's property in half, you know, another solution would be for me if we did the front cross access closest to Linder. You know, I could potentially move this fence right here, either get rid of it altogether or move it back. But either way, set back these 3 cars and then give myself enough space, a car length in front of them to put 5 cars there. So that's another kind of way that I think we could make the front cross access work with my site plan.
Council, any questions for the applicant?
Council President.
Sure.
So, sorry, I'm hearing a strong preference for the location of the cross access to be on as close to Linder as possible. Could you just explain a little more? Is it the fence? Look, it's because of your fence that you like to do that? Where I'm coming from, I would be happy to make a motion around that. But my concern for you would be if that ends up ever becoming an active cross access, then you have an issue with where your vehicles are displayed. It could disrupt your business as opposed to the location that the planning staff just indicated. You're driving the process, so
Yeah. So the disruption of an active cross access up here, I think could be circumvented by moving these cars back 20 feet and then putting 2 cars in front of them. The disruption that would happen if I had a cross access back here would just be, you know, we have, you know, some fairly high-end rental cars that we have and manage and all of those things. So just kind of the security aspect of, you know, imagine a you know, car rental lot or a car, you know, dealership with their inventory having kind of that like off of the main road access that is really secluded. That's kind of where my mind goes is, having people drive, as if it's a public road through my back lot that ideally would be somewhat secure. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Council President.
Councilmember Schrader?
So I think I'd be curious for planning staff to comment on that, just because it doesn't feel like this is a good location for cross access, but could you make that work? If the property to the north redevelops, it's possible that the house would have to be torn down. No one can predict the future. We have no idea what is planned to go there. Who knows? It could be a completely different use. No one can say. So what is your advice to us about if we're requiring a stub street where it should be required?
Council President Cavanagh, Councilwoman Strader, great question. So, and I've had the same thoughts over the past several weeks and really several months of looking at this. So I guess some pros and cons for you. For the part on Linder Road, the benefit for that is it doesn't affect the safety of his inventory, which I know is one of his largest concerns. As far as it going in the rear of the property, I would say the benefit is it keeps his display vehicles where they are. I didn't actually know that there was a little bit less grade back there until tonight because I haven't been able to walk the property. But yes, there is a little bit less grade back there, it sounds like. And really, as far as with this, some of my concern, or I guess some of the cons for it being in the front is pedestrian access is a main thing, something we hammer hard here at the city. It'd be hard to have pedestrian access on that. It'd be very difficult. I would probably have to tie in with the property to the south, and I'm not sure exactly at this time how that would work. It's some of the finer details we would find out a little bit later on. Versus if it was in the rear, it is something that, correct, there would still be plenty of room for pedestrian access to that front door. And talking with the building department, the front door with the current building, if it was to go in front of the building, would not probably be the primary entrance to the business. It would probably be the rear door building on the back side here between the future shop. That's where the customers would ideally go. It wouldn't actually be in front where that drive aisle would be. And doing some brainstorming in the past, and I'm not here to design it. We're not the design professionals, but there is the possibility of being able to move the future maintenance shop to where that drive aisle back there, can be even a little bit closer to his building and all of that. It doesn't necessarily have to be all the way back next to the inventory. And if he did choose to do so, the inventory could be gated in the back. He could have gates closing off all his parking so nothing is accessible. I don't know if that's something he'd be willing to do. I do know that he does intend to have some security on the site. I just don't know to what extent. So that's kind of my opinion, kind of weighing whether you guys want it to be on the rear or the front. Like I said, knowing that there's a little bit less grade on the rear, that does change some of the things that I was pointing out.
A quick follow-up. So if we hypothetically, if there was a motion to approve with the condition that the applicant create a stub street, would it be adequate to say to the rear, work with staff to locate a stub street behind the maintenance shop to the rear of the property? Is that how that should be worded then? And then would that give some flexibility so you all could discuss, I think, maybe with a finer point?
Council President Cavanagh, Councilmember Strader, correct. I think that is an appropriate condition. This is from last hearing. Really, the two provisions that we would need you guys to change is the 3 to 5 for the vehicle display area, so he can get his ITD dealership license. That's something that he definitely needs. And then as far as provision C, it's a matter of the easement versus the stub. And if you do want a stub, I think saying behind the maintenance shop and in between the maintenance shop and the parking is adequate to where we can work with them with some flexibility.
Thank you. Council President?
Yes, no, sure.
I am willing to take a shot at it and we could just see where we're at, maybe? Yes. I move that we close the public hearing on this item.
Motion to close the public hearing. I think I heard a second from Councilmember Overton. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. President's aye as well. Public hearing is closed.
Council President,
Councilmember Scher.
after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2024-0048 as presented in the staff report for today's hearing date with some modifications. So we would modify provision B to update it to reflect that no more than 5 cars shall be displayed along North Linder Road at any time. And then in addition, we would require the construction of a stub street to the north to be located behind the maintenance shop, to the rear of the property, between the maintenance shop and the parking, and direct the applicant to work with staff to determine that exact location.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please call roll.
Thank you, Mr. Cavanagh. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Taylor. Recused. Overton.
Aye.
Strainer.
Aye.
Whitlock.
Aye.
All ayes, the motion passes. Thank you for being with us this evening, working through this one. Very interesting for all of us. Appreciate you being here tonight. Council, we're going to move on to, thank you. Have a nice evening. Item 21 is a public hearing for Pine 43 West, application 2024-0003. Begin tonight's public hearing with staff comments.
Just one moment, please.
No problem. I spoke too quick.
Alrighty, the next application before you is a request for city council review. This site consists of 2.18 acres of land. It's zoned CG and is located at the southwest corner of North Webb Avenue and East Fairview Avenue. In November of 2024, the commission approved a conditional use permit for a drive-through establishment in a CG district within 300 feet of existing residential uses and residential zoning. The drive-through is for a restaurant and was approved for pickup service only. A menu board and/or speakers was not approved. The UDC requires a 25-foot wide landscape buffer to residential uses on CG zone property, sharing a contiguous lot line with a residential use. Because the abutting property to the west contains a multifamily residential use and the subject property consists of one parcel of land, a buffer is required along the entire western boundary of the site rather than just adjacent to the drive-through on the southern portion of the site. So the drive-through is located right here on the west side of Pad B on the southern portion of the site. And as I mentioned, the buffer we're talking about is right here along the entire west boundary. The buffer in this location does meet the minimum standard. So the UDC does allow the width of the buffer to be modified by city council at a public hearing with notice to surrounding property owners. A reduction in the buffer width does not affect building setbacks. All structures are required to be set back from the property line a minimum of the buffer width required in the district, which is 25 feet. Staff is in the process of proposing an amendment to the UDC, which would allow buildings to encroach in the buffer area if consent from the abutting property owner is obtained and if council grants a reduced buffer width. In the interim of a code change, the director has determined a building can encroach within the required buffer area if council grants a reduction to the buffer width and a reduced setback and consent from the adjacent property owners obtained for the reduced buffer and building setback. A letter of support for the reduced buffer width and associated building setback was submitted with this application from the owner of the abutting residential property to the west, provided that a privacy fence and increased plantings are completed along the west boundary of the site, which will provide visual and sound buffering to the residential units. No other public testimony has been received. The applicant is here tonight to present.
Thank you, Sonia. Council, any questions? Seeing none, invite the applicant to come forward. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. Please state your name, address for the record, and the time is yours, sir.
Yes, good evening. For the record, Jim Marsh, CSHQA Architects, 200 Broad Street, CSHQA. Also in attendance are representatives from the land ownership side. So thank you, Sonia, for your report and all of her assistance in going through this process. We do have a presentation here. A little zoomed in, I think, huh? There we go. All right. This is a rendering here to start off with of the Pad A building that is where we're actually requesting council review for the limited areas, about a 10-foot encroachment into the 25-foot required setback between these two areas. The existing townhouses that are to the west that are just recently constructed, I believe Kent went through a CU to be able to build residential in the commercial districts right between these two commercial districts. The landowner and the adjacent town owners have a long standing of cooperations for these developments. When the townhomes were developed, they had some challenges with stormwater, and our current landowner provided stormwater retention in their common space so they could develop on their very tight kind of slender portion. Additionally, they provided connection to their irrigation system for their development. And during construction, they allowed the developer to use that area for staging and such. And as Sonia has stated, that we have obtained a consent and support letter from the adjacent owner of those apartments as well. So kind of flip through these. Real quick aerial here. Currently, just to the east is the existing Pine 43 retail. It's been a very successful multi-use, mixed-use development that is nearly 100% leased out with LOIs to kind of finishing out those last spaces. So now moving to the west to complete that development here with two buildings, as Sonia said, a Pad A on the north side of the building and a Pad B on the south side of the building. So you can see the adjacent thin verticals there just to the, I guess right here are the townhomes in question between these two commercial uses. Enlarged site plan here just for little ease here. You can see the 10-foot of landscaping and a 5-foot sidewalk for this Pad A building. So we considered multiple different layouts for this. One of the first ones is, if we kind of go up to the last one, you can see on this building, most of the other Pine 43 buildings have the rear of the building facing Fairview or Cherry Lane. And, you know, they have be able to get some glass and some signage on the back. Well, in this case, when you rotate the building, the alignment of web is such that it had to line up with the access across Fairview. So it comes and it pinches that over quite a bit. So additionally, if we align the building with the back of the shops building facing Fairview, it would have exposed the front of the building and the parking to the adjacent residential. What we found is this orientation actually screens the parking lot and the front entries, most of the noise and such from the actual residences to the west. Yeah, the constraints between the parking, the landscape setback off of Webb, and just the usable space for a depth of a usable shops building is why we're in here requesting that limited encroachment there. Real quick view of what the architecture of the building looks like. It's slight deviation from what's next door, but we think it has some common features and high quality materials. Elevations, we try to keep this one actually slightly lower than that of the Pine 43 to the east of us. Wanted to try the townhomes are 3 stories tall, so we're trying to keep this building as absolutely low as possible to reduce the impact. This happens to be the building to the south, which really isn't so much in question tonight. Again, elevations there to trying to keep them a little more low and sleek. Landscaping plan here, this is the overall. If anybody's familiar with Dennis Baker's landscape plans, he's got an affinity for landscape and love for trees and does just a wonderful job with their landscaping. And whether the city would require it, he would probably go far beyond anyway. So a robust landscape plan. As we look at kind of the north side there, we have a 10-foot landscape setback and a 6-foot high privacy fence along that whole western border of the property. 5 linden trees, full-size linden trees, are proposed along the backside to give some screening to the building. As we kind of flipped through earlier, we do have a 4-sided architecture building where we try to keep high-quality materials on the side that faces west as well. Very limited access on the back. Typically, you need an emergency access off the back side of those tenant spaces. Don't really see much loading, as most of these have loading comes through the front doors, but there is a sidewalk across the back of the building for a tenant access. The southern portion, as Sonia said, we already meet the setbacks required as needed next to the drive-through that's proposed for the southern side. Landscape details, if anybody has any questions on those, we can revisit those. The 2 trash enclosures that are on the site as well. Lighting is full cutoff. Lighting would make sure everything is fully shielded so no light would spill over to the neighboring properties. We took a real quick, just to kind of show, we stepped over in our model to look at what this looks like between what a 15-foot setback and a 25-foot setback is. And that's kind of what you're looking at here. So the top is what we're proposing with a 15-foot setback with those 5 trees. The bottom is the 25-foot. It doesn't make a huge difference necessarily from on this side. You can see the 6-foot fence on the privacy side. And then we did have one more here, kind of showing it more at a perspective view of the difference between what we're asking. Again, we have representatives from the landownership here if they have any questions, but at this time I would stand for any questions that you guys may have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Council, any questions?
Mr. President?
Councilmember Taylor.
Sure, thank you for the presentation. I know you said it, I just might missing the detail. The property to your west, those multifamily, what's the distance then again between where their property line is and where the building is? Just
To their buildings
Yeah.
or to our buildings? From our property line, from the fence to our building would be 15 feet.
And then from the fence to their building?
I don't have that exact dimension here. Let's see if I could.
I'm not sure if it's necessarily relevant to the application, but
Sure.
you've,
Yeah, you can see it here, the screen portion of the building. So if this is 15 feet, it's probably another 25 feet or something on their side, I would presume, maybe a little bit more.
Council, any additional questions?
President.
Councilmember Whitlock.
Jim, just a question. The property to the west, are those owner occupied or?
They're rentals.
rent-
Yes,
And trade winds?
that's correct.
Manager for-
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any additional questions?
Council President,
Councilmember Strader.
what is the orientation of the townhomes? Because I see these little, uh, is the front entrance to the townhome actually going to be facing your property?
Yeah, the rear has the parking in the front entry, I guess, where most of the come in is actually on the west side. But I think the windows and stuff are facing from those townhomes towards the east.
Just a follow-up. So it kind of creates a little bit less of a functional front side to the townhomes. What I do appreciate here is the level of cooperation you have with the adjacent property owner. That's pretty unusual for us to see where there's this much alignment around what needs to occur. Do you know the status of the townhomes? Are they currently occupied? Or have they just been constructed? Where are those at?
They were, I believe, started occupancy earlier this year. So I believe they do have some occupancy in them currently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, whether the building's set back 15 or 25, the the occupants from those townhomes are going to be looking basically towards that 6-foot privacy fence and some landscape tree screening either way. Then it's just really the distance from that building to the, and that effect, which is kind of what we were trying to illustrate with those last couple of slides.
Yeah.
Change.
And just a quick question, have you received, I understand that the adjacent property owner that owns the townhomes is in agreement. Have you received any feedback from the tenants themselves?
We personally have not. No.
Okay.
We did go through, of course, a conditional use and had the notice signs up and stuff.
Mhm.
but,
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Marsh. This is a public hearing. Mr. Johnson, do we have anybody who signed up to testify this evening?
Mr. Council President, we did not.
Okay, nobody has signed up. Is there anybody in the room that would like to provide testimony? Free to raise your hand or join us up front. Excellent. If there is anybody watching online that would like to provide public testimony, feel free to use your raise your hand feature and we'll call on you here in a moment. Good evening, sir. Welcome to Meridian City Council. If you could just state your name and address for the record and the 3 minutes.
Tom Pedersen, 1909 North Highwood, Boise.
Thank you.
So we own one of those townhomes down the street a little bit, and it's really crowded. And there's not, to try to look out your balcony window or whatever, and see another business sitting there, or I just, I'm just not, we're not for that. I think they should leave it at the 25 feet. And, it's too tight in there. If you drive down and you look at those little townhomes, there's just hardly any room, so if that's really the only room they have. If they look out their front door, they look out their back door, is that room that they're talking about. So to cut that down, and owning one there, I'm not for that, so. That's really all I got to say. Does anybody have any questions or?
Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor? or Mr.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Mayor for the evening, President Kavner. Thank you for being here. So in relation, I don't know if you can still see the map. Where is your townhome? It's not one of the ones right there beside.
Let's see.
There's a mouse that you can use too if you want to.
I don't know. I can't see it from here. They sent us a card and it's off of Wilson is where it is. So they sent us a card here. I mean, the one we own isn't right next to the building they're building, but it's in the 43 Pines. Well,
If you wouldn't mind, just for the record, if you just want to also add your name and address for the record, your partner here that's with you, if they're going to provide testimony, we need you to speak into the microphone and need your name and address for the record.
Okay.
Good evening.
Joanne Patterson. I'm living in 1909 North Highwood Avenue, Boise. This is our townhome here, this one here. Can you see the mouse?
Right, if we can see that.
Okay, that's
Thank
what
you.
I wanted to know.
Okay.
So this side is like a 3-4 storage apartment. And then in behind the apartment and then there's little room for that. So it looks like we
Yeah.
walk through
Yeah, we've walked down that.
in front of this building, the apartment here. There's a pretty tiny street there. So I don't know how they're going to change it from 25 to 7.
Yeah.
So I didn't study to look at the map. We just received this and we said we want to come here to hear what is
Yeah.
going on here.
Yeah, it just seemed,
Yeah.
to cut it down by 2/3, that just seemed, I mean, it's tight in there anyway. And just
For that whole
I-
43, I-43, it seems
Yeah.
like really tight right now. But anyway.
Great. Well, thank you. We appreciate, again, that's the reason why those postcards are sent, to make you aware, and we appreciate you joining us this evening and
Yeah.
providing your testimony.
Thank you.
Hey, council, any additional questions? Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yep. Anyone who hasn't signed up that would like to testify, please come up and join us. Good evening, nice to have you here. If you could please provide your name and address for the record, the time is yours, sir.
Thank you, President Cavan, or Council President Cavender and council members. I'm Matt Baker with DRB Investments LLC, 1157 North Summerbrook Avenue, Meridian. Very much appreciate the opportunity to present this tonight. We've really enjoyed getting the first 5 buildings on the east side going, almost 100% full over there, now ready to move over to the east or to the west side. And we worked really closely with Steve Martinez and his dad, Ted. I have a long history with the Martinez going back to all the years that Ted built in my dad's and Dennis's subdivisions. So probably about a 40-year career amongst our family. So we were when that was Butte Fence, if you remember, that was Butte Fence before. And when they came and said they wanted to do that, we were in support of that. So we really worked closely together. And I think towards the end, Steve came back to us and said, it really is important to have that screening there. We need that because if you stand on the property, you're just completely exposed to Fairview and the traffic. So this now, the building, the landscaping provides more privacy for their units. I think that's why no one came out. Steve was in full support. They're looking forward to the landscaping that we do, the type of trees, the caliper of trees. So it's really a win for them to create that buffer and privacy for those units. And we're going to make that look like a beautiful, beautiful park strip in there. I know where they live. They live across the street in some units that my brother-in-law, Brad Dildine Hallmark Homes, built. And it's really an addition to the neighborhood, bringing in, we've got some really great uses that are looking to come in there to finish out that frontage. So I think it's a win-win for the neighborhood and especially for those people in there to get some privacy and some screening, and we will make it absolutely beautiful. Any other questions for me?
Any questions for Matt? Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anybody else who has not signed up that would like to provide testimony? Let me check real quick if there's anybody in Zoom. Not seeing anyone with their hand raised. The applicant like to provide any final comments, Mr. Marsh? Okay. Applicant's waiving final comments. Council, any additional questions for you? The applicant, staff? Deliberation? Motion's always in order.
Mr. Cavanagh,
Councilmember Taylor.
I can make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion to close the hearing in second. All in favor?
Aye.
President's eye as well. Motion passes.
Mr. President.
Public hearing is closed. Councilmember Taylor.
I think I like this project. I think when you look at it, if you don't realize just to the immediate west is another retail space. And that space is kind of a harsh, abrupt, distinct line that they're actually looking at the back side of just the building. So I actually really appreciate the fact that on the other side, which is the front, even though it looks like the back because of the way people come in to put up the landscape, I think is a really nice touch to this. That housing project there is really tucked in a really tight space. And so there's not a lot that you can do. So I think I appreciate the fact that there's an emphasis on creating a nice buffer there with landscaping, even though they're asking for a reduction in the buffer. There's not a lot you can do there. It is a really nice project. I've seen that kind of develop, and I think seeing the rest of this develop will be very nice. And I really appreciate the connectivity through to Pine through what is becoming a really nice development overall. And this is kind of one of those final pieces. So at the appropriate time, I'll be prepared to make a motion for approval.
Thank you, Councilman Taylor. And certainly I remember when the multifamily townhouse came in, when it was, it's really infill, and I know council, we really deliberated about does housing make sense right there, and certainly we agreed. And Councilmember Taylor, you're right. You contrast what is the neighbors to the west, which was there first, versus what will be with the neighbors of the east, and there is a much higher quality of life that comes for these multifamily residents with the project to the east. And I feel really confident in the applicant's ability to build this to a standards that is in line with the brand that we've seen before. And it gives me great comfort that even at a loss of space, that the neighbors in our community benefits net positive. So I certainly will be in support of this tonight as well.
Mr. President.
Councilmember Overton.
Look, I'm going to be 3 in a row. I've really liked how the Pine 43 projects come together. I think even though if you just looked at how tight things were, you might think it's too tight, but when you really look at what it's adding and all this features and all this landscaping as a buffer behind that, it's fantastic. I think it's going to be a great addition. It's well laid out, well planned. I'll be in support.
Mr. President,
Councilmember Taylor.
I move after considering all staff applicant and public testimony, I move to approve file number CR-2024-0003 as requested by the applicant for the hearing date of January 21, 2025.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please call roll.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Overton.
Aye.
Strater. Whitlock.
All ayes, the motion passes. Thank you, council. Thank you all for being with us this evening. Let's move on to our last item of this evening, item 22. This is a public hearing for Leonard Point subdivision, application H-2024-0060. Turn this over to staff, which I understand we've got a noticing error on this one, so we need to continue it.
Yes, the app, not a noticing error, but the app, well, it's a form of it, I guess, to the public, yes. The applicant did fail to post the correct hearing date on the sign, and they are requesting continuance to the February 4th hearing.
Okay,
Council,
anybody here for that? So, yep,
Council President Cavanagh.
Councilmember Schrader.
I move that we continue item 22 to February 4th.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor to continuing application 2024-0060 to February 24th, say aye.
Aye.
February 4th.
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. The president is aye as well, and the motion passes. Any future meeting topics? Not, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in